Hey, Patreon supporters, thanks for joining us for the spoiler talk about the book Baby Teeth. I'm talking very slow and carefully now because I messed up the author's name a minute ago, and I had to do this again for by Zoya Stage, Baby Teeth. Livius, what kind of things do you want to spoil?
I holy shit, man. I wasn't really sure what we were getting ourselves into. Now, if I remember, and I think I misquoted a little bit or misspoke on the actual podcast. I think this popped up on my Kindle as like the promo
Oh,
page on my Kindle. I think that's how I saw it last week, and then I looked it up. Man,
so you
it's the
lied to our
first time.
listeners.
Yes, that's well. I mean, that's okay. They're not the paying listeners. The paying listeners, Patreons, they get the truth over on this side. I am ridiculously glad that this came across my Kindle, because this book, although we didn't talk about it a lot, there's not a lot you can say without spoiling it, is really one of the creepiest books I've read.
Yeah, it really is.
This, not only is it super well written, but she does such a good job with ramping up the tension, moving the story forward. But the way she does it is just phenomenal. Like what's inside this kid's head alternated me between being terrified for her and then feeling really bad for the kid.
Yeah,
And that's a hard emotion to take when you've got someone who's clearly the antagonist, someone who wants to murder the protagonist for no reason. I mean, this is murdering her mother who loves her. I mean, that's her plan ultimately, right?
yep.
Feeling bad for this kid, and alternating between those two emotions is a tough sell. And I honestly, if you said to me, hey, you're going to read this book and you're going to hate this kid, and then you're going to be afraid of this kid, but then you're going to feel bad for this kid, then you're going to go back to being terrified of this guy, I would have been like, that's not going to happen. But it happened in this book.
That being said, because you just talked about like the range of emotions you experience in this book, did you cry?
I got a little teary eyed, and I will tell you exactly when. It's at the end when Hannah's taken to the place
Yeah.
and then left there, like the car is like leaving, like she escapes her little room and she sees the car driving off, and then again when she calls the her parents, when she actually speaks to them on the phone.
100% agree. I was crying. Oh my god, I cried so much at the end of this book. Holy shit! And I knew I was going to bring it up because, holy shit, the whole book is basically like ramping up your anxiety because you don't know what's going to happen in this weird kind of death match between a mother and her 7-year-old daughter who refuses to speak. And then once the daughter realizes what has been done, like reality sets in with her a little bit. Like the thing that she never thought could happen, never even conceived of happening, has happened, and like she's just in a full on panic. And I'm just, at the end of the day, like the kid could be a murderer, but it's still your child. So like the parents are gonna feel sad, but like she's still someone who just had her entire world taken away from her, and that emotion is so real in the book. So it's just really, really well done.
For sure. And to extend a little bit on that, this is a kid who, outside of babysitters, there's no even indication that she's ever been separated from her mom at all.
Right.
So I think, like, how do I say this? Yeah, 7 is really young, right? Maybe she can remember back to when she was 3. So that's 4 years, and that's a really short period of time. But for her, that's her entire life. That's her entire memory.
Yeah.
So at no point in the book even does Suzanne say Suzanne? Did I just say Suzanne? Suzette,
Yeah,
right?
Suzette, yeah.
At no point does Suzette even hint that she could be taken away, or that, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that had to just be such a shock. And yeah, there's that part where she walks in the room and she sees her yellow comforter and her favorite teddy bear, and whatever, and the realization sinks in. And yeah, I wouldn't say I full on cried, but I was holding tears back from rolling down my cheek. That's for sure.
Oh god, that scene where like she starts to realize what's happening, like, oh fuck, it murdered me. It was so good, so good.
You have to give credit to Zoya. for putting something together that, I kind of talked a little bit about on the podcast is the roller coaster of emotion. You have no right to feel bad for this kid.
Right.
Like, this is absolutely the right thing. This is where this kid needs to be. Right. And then yet that's the tearjerker. It doesn't come with the mom. There were a lot of times I felt really sad for the mom when I thought, like, here's this you bring this kid into the world and you feed it and you nurture it. And really, what are we supposed to do? Unconditional love for our parents. I mean, at least until we're 7, right? If not forever, like, things break down or whatever. But when you're a kid, that's all you know. It's your whole world. They're your gods that you worship. So how that must feel for her to not have any kind of reciprocal love from this kid, was really, really sad and heartbreaking throughout the book. I didn't think I would flip and be on Hannah's side in that emotional way. I mean, I definitely think that was the right thing, but I didn't think that that's who I would be like really feeling for at any point.
Yeah, and credit to the author because she made you feel that way. And the funny thing about that is, like, there's an absolute 180 in all of the characters in those chapters, because we go from seeing Hannah's panic and realizing what's happening to her and literally crying for the person who is the most evil in this book, to the next chapter seeing Suzette and Alex, like, enjoying their time away from their daughter that they just essentially abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, you heartless fucks.
Yeah, there's one goddamn line in this book that I didn't like.
Was it from Alex? Was it from Alex? Because I know what it is.
No, it's actually from Suzette. And it's after the phone call, because they're naked, right? They're like having sex in like the shed or whatever when the call comes through.
Yep.
And I know I marked it, but I think I accidentally.
Don't you love me? And she's like, not enough. Was that it?
No, like, I even thought that was okay. It's the part where he's on the phone, he gets off the phone, and she straddles his lap, and they're talking. And Suzette, because we're seeing it from her perspective, she said that's okay. She knew in a couple of minutes he'd be back inside her again.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it got relegated down to, like, sex, which I thought was I didn't like at all.
That did cheapen it. I thought you were going to say, because there was a moment where Alex was like, I don't miss her as much. Does that make me a bad person? And in my mind, I'm like, yeah. Like, it definitely takes away, like, your father of the year kind of status that we've had through the entire book. Like, if you are like your little girl is your whole world type of dad, that's not going to fade under any circumstances, is how I feel about it.
Here's what I was talking about. We'll be okay, she said. She belongs there. His tears fell onto her breast. I know. She straddled him, knowing in a few minutes he'd be inside her again. They'd both feel so much better.
Yeah.
Like, that was a really cool, and I don't know, maybe it works brilliantly. I mean, but again, back to what you're saying, like, it seemed like she was like, that's okay. They'd be fucking again in a few minutes.
Right. Almost, and like, that almost implies that she's like, well, maybe we can get it right the next time we have a baby. Like,
God.
It says it without
I
saying
didn't even
it
think
almost.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
but that's the last we see of them. That's the last we see of Suzette.
That's our final impression of them, yeah.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, maybe it's on purpose. I think I would have liked that part to be a little different. And I don't think it takes away from the book greatly or anything. Because the true ending, you think to yourself, like, she has the realization. She even says that she kind of misses mommy. I think it's in the chapter before that.
Yep.
And instead, she goes on to craft the grand plan, right?
Like, I have
I have to be the best little girl ever so I can get out of here and essentially finish what I started.
Fucking kill my mom. So, like, it's the birth of a supervillain, really, is what this book is, and I was very careful not to imply that at all. But, like, it's funny because, like, when we were talking about the part that made us cry, or that would make anybody cry, you were saying, like, she does not deserve, like, to feel, sad, to feel bad for her. And then we do, and then she validates what you said. Like, she does not deserve to be felt bad for. But, like, realistically, she's still a person, and she's just reacting to the world in the way that she knows. So, like, I feel like there's a level of innocence, even though she's making choices that are awful and evil and willful. I feel like that sense of abandonment and betrayal is still genuine.
Yeah, no, I mean, this was so well written.
Yeah, it
And
was.
I mean, and like I said, I see the horror in it. I really do. But there's so much more than this being categorized as horror.
Yeah.
So this is like, I don't know like who to recommend this book to. Like I thought like, do I recommend this to somebody who has a kid? And I thought no, because there's so much self-doubt in
Yeah.
her obviously because of Hannah's condition, right? We spend a lot of time with Suzette doubting her own abilities. What did she do? What could she have done differently? And I think every parent maybe goes through that, especially if there's a problematic, if you're not already riddled with self-doubt about how you could have made your child's life better.
Yeah.
God forbid something is bad. And you start to think about like what you could have done differently or whatever. So like, I don't know that I want to recommend this to parents. Like, I don't know if I want to recommend this to somebody with Crohn's disease or, I mean, there's a variety of, I don't know who this book is for, but God damn it, it's a good book.
Yeah, you don't want to recommend it to evil mute children. I was just thinking a little bit while you're talking. Going back to the sadness, because like, that's where I live. I live in sadness. And so I guess the real part, the turn for me where I started to feel bad for Hannah was not necessarily when they got her to the school. It was right after, it was actually at the moment that she felt relieved that the doctor understood, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It sure does.
Because I was like, well, you just sealed your fate, girl. And this moment where you feel finally understood is the nail in your coffin. And you won't know it for like 2 chapters. And I was like, that was like the saddest shit. Like, she's so happy and she finally found someone to advocate for her. And it's the person that's going to be her undoing. And it's fucking just heartbreaking.
Yeah, and that's where us knowing what's going to happen too, because I mean, so all the powerful chapters are at the end. Let's face it.
Oh yeah.
The whole like where they make what was that called? The Bumble.
Oh my god, yeah, the underbed bumper, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, like her mom, like they get home and she's like, "Hey, I have an idea. God. Sorry that I ruined your potato." And I know this doesn't make any sense to anybody who didn't read the book, but in short, there's a story that she loves for her dad to read her, and there's an bumble beast something, I don't know, I thought I had it highlighted somewhere, that grows under the bed in this story. So she at one point starts to collect up essentially garbage and out of a potato makes this figure. Well, her mom finds it, thinks it's a voodoo doll with good reason, and is disgusted by it because she's kind of a clean freak, and she destroys it. She throws it out, whatever, I don't remember, whatever, she breaks it.
She throws it on the ground and smashes
and the child is just broken apart. Yeah. So we fast forward to, to whatever, 10, 12 chapters later, after she knows that she's being sent off to this, boarding school for sociopathic children, essentially. So they're trying to make like this last weekend like a big deal without Hannah knowing. So like they have this great 2 hours of where they're sitting together and they're all working on this. And Hannah's so thrilled because not only was her feelings recognized and essentially validated by a psychiatrist.
Right, but then mom and dad basically give her what she's always wanted.
Mm-hmm. Right before shipping her off forever. Let's call it forever, because that's really what it felt like at the end, right? Yeah. That kid's never coming back.
Oh, man. Yeah. And honestly, that would not have worked so well if it wasn't for the buildup of the back and forth for like 80% of the book. Mm-hmm. You needed to like feel Suzette's perspective and feel Hannah's perspective to know just how fucking like real awful that situation is. And I think it's great that when all things are considered, like the emotional loss is Hannah's. Like, I think that would be the only way that I would feel the book is genuine, is if the emotional loss is Hannah's.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a sequel. God, I hope we don't see a sequel.
Oh God, Hannah's revenge.
Yeah, but it would be kind of interesting to see what happens and the power that she gains in now using her voice. So as she's planning this, she's finally able to speak. She was forced into speaking on the phone, and the begging was just so terrible, right? Like it was just so gut-wrenchingly awful to like hear this child who hasn't spoken ever, use her first real words, in her own voice, so to speak, to like beg for them to come get her. Ugh.
Yeah.
And I'm with Alex. She even did a good job where Alex was like ready to cave.
Yep.
And Suzette is like giving him the stink look, whatever yeah.
Now, about that, have you ever seen, this is going to be one of my weird little Rob's Life tangents that you love. Have you ever seen the movie The Patriot? It's a Mel Gibson movie.
I did.
I don't know if you remember in the movie, but he's got a little daughter that won't speak. Like
I do remember that now.
Never spoken. So like, if anybody ever asks me like, what's a movie that makes you cry every time, it's it sounds so stupid, but it's The Patriot with Mel Gibson, because like in the beginning of the movie, Heath Ledger wants to go off to war because he thinks the British are assholes, and he's right about it. And Mel Gibson's like, well, I know the cost of war. It's not something I want to do. And then it's kind of whole setup, whatever. But like his daughter, his little 5-year-old daughter or whatever, like the hook for her is she's never spoken. And throughout the whole movie, there's this daughter that's just never spoken. And finally, what is it? Heath Ledger dies, and Mel Gibson's like, well, I got to go murder every Brit now because they killed my son, like that kind of thing.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he decides he's going off to war, and he's like getting ready. He's walking to the fucking horse to go off to war. And the little girl comes running, and she's like, Daddy, Daddy, don't go, don't go. And I just like fucking fall apart every time. And it's because she wouldn't speak before. If she was speaking the whole time, I'd be like, oh, that's sad. But it's because
she's like the cutest little thing too, little blonde girl, right? Yeah.
How do you fucking say no to that? So, yeah, like that phone call at the end of the book, it did to me exactly what Hannah wanted, even though we know Hannah is doing that to manipulate her parents.
But she isn't, and she isn't. But
she's being genuine too,
right? So there are times. Even when she wanted, I think when they left her, she wanted to call his name and she just couldn't bring herself to say the words.
Right.
So that it's something broke inside of her, and you know what I mean. So part of her healing, even the parents discuss it, right? The fact that she's talking means that she's making progress. Like, it's weird. Can I tell you my Patriot story? I feel like I may have told you this before. This is just on Patreon, so sorry, Patreon guys. Many years ago, I worked for a company called Rent-A-Center, and we rented TVs
and best stories
and couches and stuff to people, right? So at any rate, I was in a weird location that at one point had way too many offices. So we had this extra room that was set up like an office, glass windows, door, the whole 9 yards, and we didn't use it for anything. This is when home theater surround sound systems were becoming a big deal. So I had the brilliant idea that we set up an actual couch love seat, like a whole living room with a home theater system, to demonstrate the capabilities of home theater. 5.1 surround sound, right? And I had been watching stuff in home theater settings myself, and the Patriot at the time had one of the best like full immersive surround sound system.
I know
like the sound. Yeah. So I'm super proud of this, and we have like bigwigs from the company in, and I'm like, can I show you guys what we did? And they're like, yeah. And I go sit down on the couch, and I didn't think this through really well. There's the scene in The Patriot where Mel Gibson, at the end of it, is he throws that hatchet. It's when he goes to rescue his son, or it's when his son is killed. But he has that standoff where he throws the hatchet, and it hits the guy like right in the head after murdering like 7 other Brits. Like the surround sound, the stuff happening behind you to the left and to the right was so amazing in that scene that's what I would show people. So I sit down, these guys who were flown in from Texas, they're all like 6-7 figure guys, like, like president of the company, like vice president of the company. And my boss has no idea what I'm doing. So I go, sit down, guys. You guys got to check this out. And I have it queued up. I know exactly which chapter it is, right? So I go and I hit it. And the surround sound is amazing. But these guys are horrified because there's nothing but blood and gore on the screen. And it all ends with that hatchet thing, right? It's like, stop it. And I look at them, and all of them just have the blankest look on their face. Like, what the fuck did we just watch? So, needless to say, that didn't go very well. I was advised shortly thereafter to find something else, maybe a Disney movie or something that I could demonstrate the wonderful surround sound setup I had, but to not use that DVD anymore.
That's you did your best, buddy.
Very proud of that.
Yeah.
To this day.
I think it was a good idea. You were ahead of your time. They weren't ready for you.
No, they were. They definitely weren't. They still aren't.
Still not. The world's not ready for Livia Snedden. Any final thoughts about this?
No, nothing over in spoiler talk. I mean, God, I've got like 20 different passages highlighted, and I'm not gonna bore people with it. I may share a couple of them over on the regular podcast.
Well, thanks again, Patreon supporters, for keeping the lights on for us, and hopefully you enjoyed this spoiler talk. This is our, I think, 21st book of 2018. We got 5 months left, so I'm sure we're gonna have, at least a dozen more, if not
Mhm.
more than that, for more spoiler talk. So, thanks again, and we will see you for our next spoiler talk.